The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of Paltalk.com, AVM software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users on demand on iTunes and on YouTube, and on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, which is a must-read if you want to know what's coming up on this show, by the way. There's a lot of great information there, and also a place where you can post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated to 12 million additional households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten, and I welcome you to the show. Well, today's first guest is U.S. Representative Lamar Smith. He's a Republican of Texas. He's the ranking Republican on the House Judiciary Committee, and we really reached out to bring Congressman Smith to you today on two counts because there are a couple of issues. One that's been a little bit under the radar lately that we really need to magnify, that he's very involved in. The other is something you're very aware of. It has to do with an appointment by the president-elect for his new upcoming cabinet. The first has to do with unemployment and the number of illegal immigrants in the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, up until now, before this collapse on Wall Street, when we've discussed this issue of illegal immigration, we've always been able to kind of shrug it off a little bit by saying, well, most of the people who come into the country illegally are doing jobs that those of us who are Americans would never stoop to taking. But now, with unemployment at a staggering 10.3 million people, 533,000 jobs lost in November alone, unemployment increased to 6.7%. Now we have a different view of all that. According to the Pew Hispanic Center, 7 million jobs in the United States are being held by illegal immigrants. The other issue that Lamar Smith is involved in has to do with the president-elect's choice for Homeland Security Secretary. He's not too enamored with that individual. Congressman Smith, welcome to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com.
Gary, good to be with you and your listeners as well, and thanks for having me on.
Well, it's my pleasure having you here, sir. So tell me, am I right that we're looking at the illegal immigration issue from a different prism now that so many of our fellow Americans
certainly
are
and we really are, and I'm going to seize on two figures that you use that I think are absolutely critical, and that's that there are about 7 million jobs being taken today by illegal immigrants, and there are over 10 million, almost 11 million people now who are American citizens or legal immigrants looking for work. That alone tells the tale, and if there were some jobs in the past where Americans wouldn't take, there are certainly fewer of those jobs today, and so it's just really a question of putting those who are in the country legally first, at the head of the line, give them the first chance at those jobs, and that's what we need to be doing. And that's also why, incidentally, I don't think we're going to be hearing too much about amnesty for the 12 million illegal immigrants in the country. We do not need to have those folks in the country competing with blue-collar workers, legal immigrants, American citizens for obviously a scarce number of jobs. And so I think the economy, the weakening economy, the recession that we're now officially in, basically means that every job needs to be looked at through two lenses. One, is there an American citizen or a legal immigrant that wants that job? They should get it. And two, anyone who has that job should advertise and try to find someone in the country legally to work that job, not try to just necessarily go to cheap foreign labor who may not be legal.
Now, it's kind of interesting because your job is lawmaker, but you don't think we actually need new laws. You think that the current laws, if they were adequately enforced, will resolve this problem for us.
That's true. To a large extent, that is true, Gary. And yes, I mean, I can come up with new laws we need, but basically, we have laws on the books. A lot of them go back to 1996. piece of legislation that I introduced in the House and that passed. And if we were just to enforce current laws, we would do a lot to reduce illegal immigration in America. Let me give you one quick example. It's called employer sanctions. It's the law that was initially passed in 1986 that we tried to toughen up in 1996 that says you can only hire someone in the country who is in the country legally. Now, if we enforce that law, that huge magnet that attracts so many people to our country, and we understand why they want to come. We're the freest, greatest country in the world, but we can't have everybody in the world come who wants to come. It would be hundreds and hundreds of millions of people. But if we just enforce that one law alone and said to employers, you need to check to see whether that person who's applied for a job is in the country legally, that would have two immediate impacts. One, it would mean that people in the country illegally couldn't get jobs, and two, it would mean that if they couldn't get jobs, a lot of people would return to their home countries, and that alone would reduce illegal immigration tremendously. So that would be an example of one law that we ought to enforce that would reduce illegal immigration and then have the secondary and very positive effect of frankly keeping American jobs for Americans. And I think everybody, that, by the way, the employer sanctions that only hiring legal workers is supported by something like 80% of the American people. So I don't know why it's so hard to enforce a law that's already on the books and that has public support other than an unwillingness on the part of both Democratic and Republican administrations over the last 20 years to do something that sometimes is a little unpopular with some people.
Now, the E-Verify program has been in effect. The House passed an extension by a 407-2 vote. Is that still before the Senate, and is there some concern, in spite of the overwhelming support that it got in the House, that it may not pass the Senate?
Well, the E-Verify, unfortunately, the Democrats in Congress only agreed to continue it until this coming March, 3 months from now. Most of us wanted a permanent reauthorization because the E-Verify program allows employers to either through their computers or through a phone call check to make sure that the